we had to go and identify Paul's body. As you can imagine, it was very traumatic. And but then the next day, something happened in our lives which we're never ever going to forget. And we're so thankful. And what happened was, I don't know if you've ever seen on TV where when somebody's murdered, they have an interview and people appeal for witnesses. And that's what we went to do. And at the end of the TV and radio part of it, they said, would it be okay if we asked questions? And I thought, well, yes, that's okay. If we can answer and if we can do it, we'll do that. And at the end of all the questions, a man who I will forever be grateful to asked us this question, and he said, this is the day after Paul died, and he said, what do you think about the people who killed your son? And we both said, we forgive them. Now, that might surprise you, but at that moment in time, it shocked us. Because it's like somebody else said it really, you know. And but it's proven to be such a blessing and such a healing power in our lives. It just amazes us, you know, because I was the pastor of the church for around 26 years, something like that. And of course I believe in everything, you know, forgiveness. I wasn't a stranger to forgiveness. And I think probably that's why we were able to say, excuse me, I think that's why we were able to say, we forgive. And when we said that, it was like something strange happened to the whole room. It's like as though the room sort of shot back and there was an absolute quiet and stillness. And people everything just stopped. And then when we got outside of the police station, the headquarters, we said to each other, what just happened? And it just didn't seem like it was us who said it. And yet, because of what would happen, it was so very real. And just to be able to say we forgive, it was the most amazing experience. It was like a weight that just dropped off. And we felt free, even though it was only the day after. And you know, what we find is, for a lot of people, is when things go wrong in relationships, with our children, when our children don't do exactly what we say, because sometimes children are naughty, aren't they? Even if they're 40 or 50. You know, and we worry about them, and we think, we stand in judgment of them a lot of the time. We certainly knew there were moments when we just thought, no. But you know, forgiveness is a wonderful thing. And if you've had a breakdown, maybe in relationship or health, or you've lost somebody, you know, forgiveness really is something that needs to be activated in us. And for us, it was an act of the will. Forgiveness was an act of the will. And you may be here today and you might be able to think of a situation with your auntie or your uncle or your mum or your dad or your son or your daughter, your brother, your sister, where you just can't get things right. And it's very hard to forgive. And you may have even said, I'll never forgive them. And I want to tell you that if you've said that, or you're living in that, I want to tell you that it's such a waste. And we speak to thousands of people. And you know, it's a pressure on their minds. It's a pressure on their bodies. And sometimes people who can't forgive, they're not always the happiest people to be around. Because there's something happening in them. And it's as though it builds up and builds up. And it ends up, I don't think I can describe it as like it's like having a brick here. And it becomes so pressed down because we haven't dealt with these things. And in the end, it just becomes solid, so you can't move it. And you know that you need a change. You know that you need to be released from that unforgiveness. And like I say, I was just so thrilled to be able to do what we did and to say that we are sorry. Around about a year after Paul died, I went to Wales and I had a real bad stomach problem. I thought I had food poisoning. I went to the doctor and he said, oh, I had a bit of food poisoning. And I said, okay. A few days went by and it was over. And then 3 months later, so it was just about a year, roughly, after Paul died, I was ill again and I had this stomach problem. And in the end, we had to call for an ambulance because I was literally screaming with the pain. I had no idea what was happening. I thought I must have food poisoning again. And it turned out that I had acute pancreatitis. If you know what that is, it's quite a shocking illness. And took me to hospital and I had to wait to see the doctor, initial examination. And they put me into a ward, a temporary ward, and heard the nurse say, there's no hope. You won't be here in the morning. And I thought, they're talking about me. And I thought, can't be, you know. I'm young and fit and healthy. And anyway, I woke up the next morning and I was still there. And I thought, right. And, well, basically, I went through a period of time where I had treatment, and I think over the period of time, say a week, they told Lynn that I would not survive the night. As you can see, I'm here. And you know, when I was in hospital, one of the things that I experienced was this thing about forgiveness again. And I used to have a friend who I met who was a massive man. And when we used to meet, he'd shake my hand and he'd say, there's nothing between. There's nothing between. Meaning, we don't have any problem. There's no ill feeling, there's nothing. We're friends. We're in a relationship. And you know, I had to examine my heart. Was there anything between me and somebody? Was there anything between me and God? And you know, when you're dying, which I just thought I was because I was ready to go, you know. It was as though God was waiting at the side of me, and I just said, Lord, lift the curtain and I'll come. And I just felt, I could just see this curtain as if God would just hold it back and I'd just be there in his presence. But that didn't happen. And you know, I examined myself about this area of forgiveness. And I had to say, Lord, is there anything between us? Is our relationship clear? Is it free? Is there nothing that I hold against you? And I just don't know, there isn't. And then I had to think about other people. Maybe people who'd hurt me, offended me, or whatever. And gladly I could say, Lord, there's nothing between. There's nothing, there's no unforgiveness in me at all. And I'm ready. I'm ready, Lord, to come. And as I say, a number of times I experienced this where I just felt I'm just going to come and be with the Lord. And I can say that they are some of the most peaceful nights I have ever spent in the whole of my life. And sometimes after that I think, Lord, am I still ready? You know. But forgiveness is a major area that we need to look at in our lives, because when we don't have forgiveness, then we don't really have that complete peace that we should have. We don't have that freedom of relationship with God that he deserves. You know, we're not living in God's best. And so I was just thrilled to know that I could live peacefully with God. And the other thing, one of the verses that the Lord gave me at the time was this, and it says this, it's Romans 8:28, and it says, "For we know that all things work together for good, to those that love God and are called according to his purposes." Now, you might say, yes, I know. But, there comes a time that this is not enough, but we know, and we have to start knowing, knowing and experiencing that sense of security where we say, Lord, whatever happens, I know it's for good. And the reason I know that is because I love you, and I'm called according to your purpose, and that enables us to face things. It enables us to go forward. Again, going back to the things about when we fall out with people and when we hold things against people. I want to encourage you today, whatever that might be. It could be a relationship, and sometimes when we talk about relationships, it's hard to say, isn't it? But it may be that you've lost somebody. And sometimes we can hold God responsible for them. Sometimes we can blame God. I just want to say that we need to exercise forgiveness. When we said to the guy in the radio interview, we forgive. Every day of our lives, we're still forgiving. Because it doesn't just go away. And it's not a one-off thing. It's something that we need to practice regularly to make sure that nothing comes in. And the thing that I've found is this, that the tiniest thing, Paul's death was just off the scale. The tiniest thing can just come in. And they're the hard things to deal with because we don't recognise that things are coming in, ill feeling, unforgiveness, whatever. And it's made me more acutely aware to keep a short account, to make sure that I don't let things run on, to make sure that I don't let things just go by and say, it's only small. Because it's the thin end of the wedge, isn't it? When we allow it to be small, insignificant, but they're not insignificant. So I just really want to encourage you just to keep a short account. And if you remember that little phrase, there's nothing between me and man, nothing between me and God. And it stands you in good stead. And the other thing I want to just encourage you with, and I'll finish with this, is that, what we couldn't do with our strength, God's enabled us to do with our weakness. And I don't know if you've ever approached somebody in a wheelchair. You see somebody and you go to talk to them. What's the first thing that you do? You come down to their level. And for us, the experience that we've had in using Paul, it's enabled us to come down to people. And it's enabled us to be believable with people. And virtually everywhere we go, we meet with people who've suffered loss, who've had a broken relationship, so many things. And they recognise our weakness, and they come to us. You see, sometimes we depend on our strength, our good looking, our good looks, our personality, whatever. But actually, weakness is a very attractive thing in people. And I'm shocked at the amount of times that people come down to us. They come down to us, and we meet them where they are, and they tell us things that they've never told anyone. Just recently, I was at a meeting in Wales, and I think this is where Mike got our contact from. And after I finished speaking, a man of, say, 60, late 60s, sat opposite me, and he just opened up his heart. He said, many years ago, he said, we lost a child, by a miscarriage. And he said, I've never told anybody that before. I said, nobody in my church knows that. You see, I was privileged because I was coming down and we met at that level. And you know, sometimes when we are confident and we're